Tech Talk Tuesday, number 123. It's December, close to Christmas, so I'm at Julie's house, and she has a really nice Christmas tree upstairs. She let me borrow the spare bedroom upstairs so I can share this with you guys. And I'm going to say hi to a few folks. I want to say hi to Ricky and Alex for tuning in on Tech Talk number 123. Hey, Greg Cash, great name. I know I say it every week. I can't imagine my last name being, let's see, what would it be? Cash Bryce. Hey, Alan. Hi, y'all. Charlie Edmerson. Charlie and Steve Perry. Hey, look. Charlie. GB3, thank you, man. Ken, Chris. Yep, it was good seeing you today, brother. Got a lot of cool stuff I want to share with you guys. I think it's going to be very interesting because I try to come up with some new content every week. Hey, Matt, Brian, Mark, Greg. It's stuff that just gearheads and engine enthusiasts, and of course people that are looking for more performance and more power and just want to understand the unusual, the way all these parts and pieces create personalities for engines. And hey, Michael and Tim, Brian, I wanted to talk a little bit about the personalities of engines and how they develop and what we can learn from it, how we can help create a performance increase knowing these personalities of these engines. Hey, Ed. 1,800 hours. That's a lot of hours. Donald, hey, man. Michael, Doug, Joe, and Scott. Joanne and Scott, hi. Yeah, I hadn't been over there to Moonshine to get my calendar yet, but I appreciate the note. Thank you. To Theodore, I wanted to apologize, make an excuse that Jackie and I have been moving. We moved from one house to another house. We moved from Hendersonville to Mount Juliet, Tennessee. It's not very far, one side of the lake to the other. Hey, Brad. Hey, Stanley. Merry Christmas. Hope you're feeling better, my friend. Hey, Clayton. God bless y'all. Mark, I wanted to tell you that at our new place in Mount Juliet, we are so far in the country now that cell service is bad and internet service is non-existent. So it's only 8 miles over here to Julie's house where I could use her part. Hey, Michael and Wiley. Hey, man. It's really cool to get to use my daughter's place here. She's married to Tyler Bennett, and he's an engineer, and she's a real estate agent, and they're doing really good over here in Nashville. And we moved here a year ago to get closer to them and to also create some new opportunities with several Harley-Davidson dealerships here in Nashville and around surrounding area. And then, of course, the population here is really huge compared to the little town I was in. But our new place is nice because it's not too close to a city, and it's not too far away, so you can get anywhere in just a few minutes, especially if you go at the right time of day. Hey, Wesley. Hey, John. Hey, Bryce. That's it, man. If I had you, Bryce, and I had Cash, I could be Cash Bryce. That would be awesome. Hey, William. So, yes, I did. I had to go searching for it, but Julie said, just come over to my house, so that's great. Anyway, we're supposed to get 2 new services tomorrow. Hopefully, maybe tomorrow through Saturday, we should be able to get our phone service jacked back up where it needs to be and our internet service so we can service all of our accounts and take care of our business. Because even though I am retired, hey, John, hey, Harvey, I'm retired from retail sales in the store and working on engines and trying to create a payroll and trying to make the payments every month. And it's really nice to be able to take all the years, hey Vince, hey Daryl, take all the years of running the Star Racing Company for 41 or 2 years now and take that opportunity and turn it into a show like this where I can share that information and also create a product line that I've never been able to do before because I was always focused on something else like professional racing or trying to get customers' engines and bikes done so that I could pay the bills and go where I needed to go next. So anyway, I'm very thankful to be able to have this opportunity. I created a product line that I love to share with you guys. Now, one thing I have learned in all these years working on the racing engines and the Harley-Davidsons is they all really makes sense with a V8, a V10, a V12, a Pose 6, a 4-cylinder, a twin, or a single, because it is the engines, the piston in your engine. If you race in a Pro Mod car, top fuel car, funny car, Pro Stock car, whatever you're racing, a V-twin, a Harley, or a Briggs & Stratton, that piston that's in that engine and that spark plug and the connecting rod and crankshaft does not know where it lives. You can, like if they had like a phone, you could call them up and say, hey man, you know where you are? I said, no, but I'm sure catching the dickens over here. I got big pressure pushing me down. I got all kind of explosions going on in here. I got gas and oil all over me, and I'm going up and down so fast I can't even focus. So the piston has no idea where it is. Great picture last night there, Tom and David. So hey y'all, Chris, I want to switch this. Oh, first I want to have the opportunity to put my antlers on. I hadn't had that yet. Let's try that. There you go. Whoop, there it is. Yeah, I got my antlers, so I could be like deer George, and then over here, Star Racing, I have my star on my head. I know that's stupid, isn't it? Hey, but I'm having fun with it. This guy over here looks like a reindeer leaning at me. But I'm going to the board now. This will be serious, okay? I'm through horsing around. I'm going to try and not make a bunch of noise with this camera and this phone, where it can be easier to understand. First off, I want to share with you Tech Talk Tuesday. For you new folks, this is Tech Talk Tuesday. I have been doing this every Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern for 123 weeks by the grace of the good Lord. Thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Daryl. Randy, sorry for your loss, Randy. I know this is a little bit hard time for us to have a conversation, but to share some stuff. Hey, George, I hope you're doing well, man. 1, 2, 3, I know, right? All right, here's the meat and potatoes of what I was thinking of today. I wrote up here cam timing, pipes, air fuel, and a histogram. And I drew 3 dyno curves up here that I'm going to explain with you in a minute. But first, I want to share this idea about this histogram. And I'm going to do this off the cuff. I don't have any notes. I got here within about 5 minutes of running this show. So bear with me, as you always do. Thank you. So the histogram, this is something that we learned years ago. 1984, I bought my first race pack data logger to go on my first Suzuki Pro Stock motorcycle, and it had recording capabilities for 3 RPM. The first one was the engine RPM, so it would measure the tach signal coming off the coil, and it would print out what the engine RPM was going down the racetrack. You know, first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and on. The second RPM that it had was the rear wheel, which I put a little aluminum collar on the front sprocket that had magnets and had a magnetic pickup, and it would show how many revolutions the rear wheel would go. So if it had 3-to-1 gears or 4-to-1 gears, the engine RPM would go, well, how many ever turns, and then the rear wheel would go. But this is the catchy part for racing a motorcycle or anything with a primary reduction ratio. On the Suzuki, we had input shaft and we had three shafts in the engine. I'm gonna move this over and show you. They weren't in the engine, I'm sorry. It had a crankshaft, an input shaft, and an output shaft. Crankshaft had how many ever RPM it had. The primary gear was on the input shaft, and it also had a gear on the crankshaft that would mesh with that would spin the input. Then all the gears on the input shaft would mesh with all the gears on the output shaft. Okay? So the crankshaft would spin at engine RPM. Then the primary reduction ratio, if it was a 2-to-1, if the engine was turning 12,000, the input shaft would be turning 6,000. So the clutch speed was half the speed of the RPM on the engine. I think the Pro Stock Suzukis now are 2.14. The Pro Stock S&S 160s are 1.36, and our new Harley Milwaukee 8 is a 1.36. Hey, Ronnie. Hey, Barry. Hey, Co. Good to see you, champ. Michael. So we had engine RPM, we had input RPM, and we had output RPM. Now this is way back. I'm talking about 1984. And these 3 RPMs would give us opportunities to get graphs, like an engine RPM going first gear, second gear, third gear, everything. Then the output would just show us the increase of the speed with some RPM in it. Now the clutch was bolted onto the input, and whatever went through the clutch would go through the output. I think that's right, isn't it? No, they were both on the same shaft. Let's see, output and the clutch. Yeah, input had the clutch on it. Okay, so if the clutch slipped, we would get less RPM through here than we had here. In other words, the primary gear would put the speed into the clutch, and then the input shaft inside the clutch would show us the speed going out of the input shaft. So we had a magnet on the outside of the engine. We had a little sensor with magnets on it, and we put another magnetic sensor out here to measure this speed, so we could look at a relationship between the crankshaft and the input shaft. That showed us real-time clutch differential. This is old now. I'm talking about, what's that, 94, 04, 14, 20. Yeah, it's been 35, 40 years ago, and I'm not saying we invented it. RacePak had it. But what it gave, this showed us the rear wheel speed. So when we had these 3 RPMs, we could come up with some pretty extraordinary graphs for our time. And the histogram is what intrigued me, because when I dynoed this engine at home, we would find peak horsepower. Like I would use example, this green chart. And if you're a little bit colorblind like me, that's this one. I would dyno the Suzuki Pro Stock engine until it made peak power, just like a Pro Stock car, just like a Pro Mod car. If you could dyno it, you would find peak horsepower. Well, I was shifting. I would go here to peak and shift, and go here to peak and shift, and go here to peak and shift. And the RPM chart would show this, and it would look like this. Starting line, first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and on. That's what the RPM chart would look like. Then if I put the input shaft on top of that, it would show clutch slip. So this area was slipping the clutch. And then if it showed, then you can measure the rear wheel, and it would show if the tire spun versus that. Like you take off from first gear, it would go along, it would shift to second, shift to third, shift to fourth. So the rear wheel speed could look like this. And then the third RPM was really intriguing to me, because this was the first time I saw the clutch totally isolated on a different chart. It would show where you started off, and clutch would slip through low, then you shift to second, then you shift to third, then you shift to fourth. So all of these overlaid would look something like this. And that's a rough drawing. But this would show the engine RPM, the rear wheel RPM, and then the clutch relationship between the two. Now let's go to the histogram, because that's next on the agenda. On your car or your motorcycle or your anything, this is time on the left axis. Time. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Let's say it's a street car or a Milwaukee 8 or a twin cam or anything. This is time. This is RPM. So this graph would show us the amount of time spent at each RPM, say in a 10-minute period or a 30-minute period or whatever time you would figure out. So it would record, and I'll show you what my histogram looked like on my Pro Stock. No, not my Pro Stock, because that was too many RPM. But let's do like my Milwaukee 8 going to the store. I was idling for this long. I was riding along at 2,000 RPM for this long, and I was riding along at 3,000 RPM for this long. And during the time to the store and back, this is kind of where my histogram looked. This is just a typical, call it out of my head. I spent more time idling because I was at traffic lights and running really slow. I spent a little bit of time between 1,000 and 3,000 RPM, but I spent the most of my time going to the store and back at 3,000 and 4,000 RPM. Now, where I was dynoing, all this dyno work that we do all in our industry, and we post all over the internet, and we post on every forum our dyno sheets. This is how much time we spend on the dyno sheet. So my struggle with this whole dyno internet war or comparison of this cam works and that cam works and this cam's better than that cam, the only thing they have to base it on is this right here. And we have done a great job in our career coming up with 3 cams for Milwaukee 8 to give us 3 curves that look like this. One that makes top end power, a little less down low. One that makes mid-range, down low, and up top. Then we got another one that makes more down low and less up top. Those are 3 different cams in the same engine. And I'll go over that as we proceed. But I wanted to show you that where we spend the majority of our time, minutes and minutes and minutes, at 3,000 and 4,000, and then this is really a little bit wrong. The next longest one is 2,000 RPM. We spend the most time at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 RPM, yet we don't get dynoed here, yet we don't get compared here. But this is what makes you like your motorcycle or not like your motorcycle. This is what makes you like your 4-speed Chevelle or Camaro or Mustang or not. This right here, this is where you drive. The camshafts that we sell are made to run where you're happy and smiling and grinning at the amount of G-force you get by giving it a little bit of throttle. And that's right in here. Now, if you're going to be racing like Bagzilla or Buck, my histogram would look like this. If I go to the drag strip with Buck, I had a 30 seconds at idle. I had less than 30 seconds at 2,000. I held it at 3,000 about this long at the starting line. And then at 4,000, it's never really there unless I'm driving back. And then this is about this long. And then going down the track, the run, I use this much time. So that's a different histogram than I would have used on the street. Yeah, you're exactly right, George. Smiles per gallon comes in this zone right here. This is where you're having fun with your motorcycle right here. This part here is the only thing you compare with the world. Whatever your dyno sheet says at 6,000 is what you and the internet heroes have taught us to understand this is the best, where this is not. So let's go to this dyno sheet. Let's talk about that for a minute, because now I have noticed some people getting a little bit smart and a little bit savvy in the dyno wars where they show their dyno sheets, is what kind of power you have over here seems to be more important now than it was with how much power you got. That's because this matters more time than this does. Now, if you're in a dyno shootout or a dyno contest, the guy with the most horsepower wins. That's the guy that spends the least amount of time on his histogram. Back to the street version of the histogram would be this long at 6,000, this long at 5,000, this long at 4,000, this long at 3,000, this long at 2,000, and this long at idle. This histogram here is our daily life, not the dyno sheet. Now, if you're trying, like I said, if you're trying to win the dyno shootout, make sure you buy the cam that has the latest closing intake. You use the shortest 2-in-1 pipes or straight pipes, and you put the biggest heads and manifold and everything, and you make sure that it makes the most power up here and forget about how much it makes here. Now, if you ever hear George Bryce, or people now are starting to talk about it, is the left or right of the dyno sheet. This is the left, and this is the right of the dyno sheet, and 5252 is the halfway point, because everything to the left, you're going to make more torque than horsepower, and everything to the right, you're going to make more horsepower than torque. So horsepower is from a horsepower is after peak, more horsepower. Like look at right here, peak torque below 5,200, peak horsepower after 5,200. You can see that this cam makes more torque than it does horsepower. The yellow one, it makes peak torque here and peak horsepower here, but it's still got more horsepower after 5,200. But look at this pink one. It makes peak torque here and peak horsepower here, and that's before 5,200. The green one, I'm sorry. The green one makes, that's not peak torque, that's horsepower. The green one doesn't make any power until over here past our histogram. Now, if I was to put a torque curve on top of this green one, the torque curve would probably look like, let me try and guess how it would look. The green one, I'm going to draw another green line to make it better. The green one has a torque curve that looks like this. That might be a little bit wrong. And the pink one has a torque curve that looks like this. And the yellow one would have a torque curve that looks like this. I know that's very confusing with all those colors. These over here are intake valve closing numbers at 50 thou. The red one, which has the most power early, closes at 15 degrees after bottom. The yellow one, which has got the most mid-range between both, closes around 32. And the top end one on this sheet is 42 thou intake closing at 50 thou lift. Now, the cams that we sell, which I promise I'm not trying to make a commercial out of this, just want people to understand what goes on. Our low-end power cam is 25 close, our mid-range cam is 42 close, and our full race cam closes at 52. So that gives us really good power ranges. This is for a stock engine. It really traps the mixture before 5,200, so you got that miles per gallon. This one is really great for a 124, 128, 131. It closes at 42, makes a lot of low-end power and great top-end power. And then the full race doesn't care about torque. If it wants a really big engine and you want to really rev it up, it's going to make the big power after 5,200. Coming in hot. Let's see. The pipe. The exhaust pipe really makes a huge difference in here, y'all. If you have a dyno sheet, and I see them on the internet every day, guys, poor guys buy some trick pipe of the week where it's a shorty and it has a turnout before the bags, or there's something that looks cool or sounds cool. They don't look good or sound cool to me, but that's an opinion. But if you see a dyno sheet that looks like this, needs two things. It needs a better exhaust pipe and it needs a better tuner, because the air-fuel ratio that you need to ask your man for, you need to ask him for the air-fuel ratio. I'm not talking about the input that he puts. People, every time I ask for air-fuel ratio, they send me a little picture of a chart that looks like this, and it's got blocks, and it says this was what's in my power commander. It has yellows here and yellows here and yellows in my power vision, and then it has, you know, different color here and different color here. That's not the wideband O2 result. That is the input that your tuner is putting into the motorcycle. That's the map, fuel map that's in it. You need wideband results. There's one for the rear cylinder and there's one for the front cylinder, and Steve Johnson's Pro Stock Suzuki has 4 of them. He has one on every cylinder, so he can get 4 graphs. After a run, he gets 4 air-fuel ratios for him to look at, so he can jet or tune each carburetor until it goes the fastest. Now, EFI today is really, really awesome with that stuff, and if a guy has 4 cylinders, like a 4-in-1 pipe, and he has 1 wideband O2 sensor on it, then he's getting an average of the engine. On your Harley, if you're a Milwaukee 8 or your twin cam, you got to have 2 widebands that record the air-fuel ratio so we can see where it's lean and where it's rich. This could be very fat or very lean, but the horsepower curve, this is a horsepower curve. This looks horrible. You could put a longer pipe on it and a better muffler, and you could take this dyno sheet and you can make it look just like this with a good tune and a good pipe. You can get rid of this peak and you can get rid of this. This is crazy. I changed the tailpipe on Buck and picked up 20 foot-pounds of torque right there at 3,500 RPM by putting a different tailpipe on it from here to here. Made the same power up here, But man, you're talking about you had like, it felt like it had a 110 cubic inch engine in it down here before. And when I got finished with the right pipe, it felt like it had a 124. It went from a 110 to a 124 engine. It helped so much. I covered the pipe, the air fuel, cam timing, histogram. Yeah, the 3 RPMs. Good stuff. Okay, so let's look for a minute here. I'll switch back. Oh, 123. Tech Talk 123. I wanted to tell you a little bit about histogram, the pipe, and the cam timing, and the air fuel. So I'll say it. Yes, our 30-30 cam closes at 25 on the intake. Our 3/4 closes at 42 on the intake. And our full race cam closes at 52 on the intake. And our exhaust lobes are totally different. We don't have a single pattern profiles. We have for real exhaust lobes that make the engine needs 2 lobes. It needs an intake lobe and it needs an exhaust lobe. And if you ever see a camshaft for sale that has the same intake and exhaust lobe, only one of them is going to be close to right and the other one's nowhere close. So there's some cams on the market that say have 250 on the duration. One of them's wrong. And probably both of them are wrong. It's just very easy and convenient, and it worked on so much stuff. But look, our industry and our competition is so good and so savvy, and the relationships of how much power all these engines make. Let me just say this: back up 10 years. If you had 120 or 130 horsepower V-twin, you could sell a guy to ride to work, like say a Thrasher Kid or a 110 or a 117, and it made 120, 130 horsepower. You were very rare and very few, because there weren't many people making 130 horsepower with street-ridden V-twin engines at 10 to 1, 11 to 1 you could drive to work on regular pump gas. But now with the Milwaukee 8, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, everybody's 150 horsepower hero now. It changed the game dramatically. Every single person can buy a 131, makes 130. The lowest horsepower guy with a kit or a 131 or a 128 or a 124 is 130 horsepower. That's where we were 10 years ago for the best. Now everybody's good at it. But while everybody's good at it now, we'll see dyno sheets and we see race pack data. We see Tech Talk, TTS, the Power Vision. We see a ton of bad tunes, tons of bad tunes. It's not the tune, the box. It's not the TTS fault. It's not the Power Vision fault. It's not the the Thunder Max. It's not their fault. It's the guy driving. It's like the car wreck. Yeah, well, nobody's driving. Or if the guy's driving, some of these tunes look like the guy's drunk. It's like TUI, tune under influence. That's not how you do it, man. You get that engine screaming what it needs. You got to have both wide bands, or if it's a 4-cylinder, you got to have 4 wide bands. I've tried to tune a 4-cylinder before with 1 wide band, and it takes forever because you got to get 1 cylinder right, then you got to move it to the next one and get it right, move it to the next one and get it right. So if you bought the right pipe, a nice long 2-in-1, and you bought one of our cams and you put it in the proper package and you put it together and take it and get it tuned and it doesn't make horsepower, get the guy to print out the air-fuel ratio chart where it shows how the air-fuel ratio. And I'm talking about I'm not saying squeeze it down to where it's just a straight line. I'm talking about get him to expand the window so you can see the roller coaster of the air-fuel ratio and see where it's too lean and too rich, and it will match the bad shape of your horsepower curve. Okay, I'm through ranting and raving on that. I just wanted to tell you all again, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Next week, I should have my own internet and be back in my own man cave where I can do this at home. I'm very thankful for Julie loaning me this. And if you need a good realtor in the Nashville area, please call Julie Bennett. She works at Keller Williams, and she helped us find the nice shop with a house in front. And we moved where we moved a year ago because we didn't find it. So we moved, got everybody in, Jackie's mom and dad and the puppy dog and me and Jackie, we lived there, and it was great. Then we went on the hunt for the one that has the big shop for me to put all my stuff in and a nice house for us to live in, and Julie helped us find it. So that's the commercial. Thank you all. Have a great evening, And please send me questions and ideas and feedback. I really enjoy it, and I need it and make this better. You can help me tune Tech Talk Tuesday on number 124 with good feedback. May God bless. Amen.